website under the volunteer tab. Next month, we will be back here. The presentation will be on landscaping with native plants. And with that, I want to introduce our speaker, Daniel Heaton. The talk, obviously, circular materials flow in a living laboratory. So after an 18-month round-the-world trip, Daniel was reinvigorated and inspired by the many circular economies and sustainable initiatives underway abroad and wanted to ensure his own community in the US was making the same progress. Using his 13 years of experience as a project manager and process improvement consultant, he began working closely with several local organizations, helping them accelerate their circular and sustainability efforts. He currently manages all plastic and organic waste program for Envision Charlotte. Now, this is what Viverjita originally sent me, but she only just now told me the very most important thing is that he's a graduate of Virginia Tech. So he is also a Hokie. Okay.
Indeed. Thank you so much. And go Hokies. Certainly cheering for our women's basketball team this weekend. Excited to wear my maroon and orange this weekend. Charlotte is an amazing Hokie alumni. Or has an amazing alumni group. So if you haven't visited Charlotte recently, would certainly welcome you down. But more importantly, we've got this amazing building that I'd love to tell you about here in Charlotte that has drawn me away from the otherwise my most favorite place of Blacksburg, Virginia. As mentioned, am working for an organization currently called Envision Charlotte, which is a nonprofit built as kind of a public-private private plus kind of partnership. But ultimately, we're championing the sustainable and circular economy goals of the city. And it started with a 2018 study that we hired Metabolic, which is a consulting firm out of Amsterdam. So Europe has a lot of circular economy initiatives that are currently underway. Some are even law policy. I think it's pretty safe to say that they are ahead of us when it comes to circular economy than in the US. And real quick, sorry, before I dive in, if you have any questions, send them my way. No reason to have me chat for 20, 30 plus minutes without any questions. So if anything comes up and you need more information on, or just let me know. Thanks. We hired Metabolic. They analyzed Charlotte's waste streams, did a full dive into what we are creating, what are we producing, what are we throwing away, what are we composting, what are we recycling, what's closed, what's linear, and they developed this report. This report is public, it's online. You can go to Circular CLT and get the full report or an executive summary of the report. But it basically said, Charlotte, here's how you're doing, and it's not that great. It's below the national average, but for the glass half full people, there's a lot of opportunities. So I took that as obviously a challenge to help Envision Charlotte and to basically go through this report, which outlines 5 business cases for making Charlotte the first city in the country. I'm also kind of presenting and before you today with the understanding that circular economy you've already kind of been through. So if you have any questions on how it relates to circular economy, certainly let me know there too. But in this report, 5 business cases for Charlotte specific, but it could probably be duplicated throughout the country to make Charlotte, or to focus on the kind of the biggest problems and opportunities in Charlotte. First of which being textiles. So the Carolinas are known for a lot of its textile manufacturing and production. So closing the loop on textiles, focusing on large volume industries like hotels and hospitals, or focusing on post-consumer where you have someone like a Goodwill that you would think, or maybe the public thinks, that anything and everything that goes to Goodwill is just handled when it's actually not. A lot of what Goodwill receives ends up going to landfill because they can't sell it, they can't move it. We've got a partnership that I'll tell you a little bit later. But textiles, problem number one. Food waste and organic waste, problem number two. So developing a commercial scale facility, introducing black soldier flies and the larvae in order to process that feed or process that organic waste and create a higher value feed. So instead of just a soil amendment and compost through traditional means, creating a higher value product through black soldier fly larvae. Business case number three is what I'm currently in right now, which is a material lab or the innovation barn, called the innovation barn because it used to be a barn. Ironically, and as the folklore goes, this used to be a barn for the horse and oxen that pulled around the trash carts in the city about 100 years ago. So complete, talk about closing the loop, to take a trash building and turn it into a zero waste business incubator, we thought was very cool. Number four is just reverse logistics for recycling, but more broadly figuring out plastic recycling. Number five, lastly, because Charlotte is a very much booming and growing city, and there's a lot of construction and towers and cranes and C&D waste, construction and demolition waste, using some of the concrete and some of that C&D waste as inputs for other products. So we developed the Innovation Barn. The Innovation Barn is the country's first business incubator and circular economy material lab that houses a lot of zero waste initiatives, a lot of sustainable initiatives, some closed loop, some recycling economy, but all things educational and all things interactive for the circular economy. And one, educating the public on just what the circular economy is, but two, showcasing real-time, real-life solutions and opportunities for closing the loop and keeping material out of the landfill. And also, more importantly, especially for partnerships and funding sources and leadership support, that kind of triple bottom line on people, planet, and prosperity, creating jobs, creating economic opportunities, etc. So here in the Innovation Barn, I'm currently in our plastics lab in the bottom left, but we have an education center that's currently being funded. So, think school, field trips, tours, hands-on, kiosk, very safe environment. Instead of shipping a school bus full of, kids to a MRF or a recycling center where, OSHA might not be too happy about it, they can come here and can experience in a safe and informative way, what the circular economy is, the challenges of optical sorting, the differences between the number 4 plastic and the number 5 plastic, etc. We have a repair cafe here. So instead of throwing something away because it's broken, or maybe there's a weld that needs to be replaced, or you just need a tool that's otherwise cost prohibitive, but if you just had that one tool, you could fix this instead of throwing it away and buying something new. This repair cafe focuses on textiles, bike repair, providing tools in the tool wall, and just otherwise a community space to repair things versus tossing it. We have an aquaponics lab. The photo at your 3 o'clock on the screen for those watching, but that is a vertical farm implementing tilapia and leafy greens and herbs, and teaching kids and teaching the public on controlled environment agriculture. We've got glass recycling, soldier fly composting, a cafe as an amenity to bring the public in. So a lot of really neat things under one roof, and a lot of partnerships from nonprofits to for-profits throughout the community in order to really expand. Some of these were created from scratch because of the building. Some of these were existing businesses that just needed additional acceleration, funding, or other resources in order to to make the world a better place and to, keep stuff out of the landfill. One thing I'd like to focus on first, because I'm physically in the room, is our plastics lab. So nothing new here, maybe for some, but we focused our plastics lab on the open source toolkit known as Precious Plastics, based out of the Netherlands. For those that don't know, Precious Plastics is this kind of toolkit or open source online community of both equipment, machines, ideas, lessons learned, really, really cool community on taking otherwise waste plastics. Maybe it's something like, this PacTech beer holder, which is a number 2 plastic, and shredding it down, melting or extruding it, and using molds to create a new product. All of which is rather user-friendly once you either have the machines or the means or ability to make the machines. But it's a really cool hands-on approach and kind of a makerspace of sorts where the community can come in, get a quick safety lesson, and then start shredding up plastic or picking a mold off the wall to make a new cell phone case or a new X. So we also have a lot of opportunities for entrepreneurship and for students and citizens to engage in this, to maybe prototype a new product. We've got a gentleman that comes here probably once a month from Raleigh, North Carolina. He collects the plastic parts that bike shops have when they receive new bikes. These little plastic parts are protecting all the components of the bike, maybe the rear derailleur or the front derailleur. He collects all this plastic, he brings it here to the plastics lab, shreds it up, and then using the machinery that you see behind me, extrudes it into 3D printer filament, where he can then take the filament and print, whatever he needs or wants for his business or whatever he's prototyping that month. So a really cool way to take an otherwise not recyclable item via curbside or traditional means and turn it into a really useful product, all of while kind of keeping it out of the landfill and showing that, light bulb moment of, oh, I can take this and learn the melting properties and learn how to safely extrude it or turn it into something new. And then that process is ultimately scalable. When he's collecting 1 or 2 bike shops, he can collect 10 or 20. The machinery can has X amount of output per filament. He could then maybe sell that filament, etc. So a really neat way to use otherwise cost prohibitive equipment for this particular individual in a low cost or no cost setting to scale a future idea. So really excited about kind of how we formed this foundation, but it got immediately put to the test during COVID. So everyone lived through COVID. Everyone kind of saw some of the challenges that it presented and is still maybe presenting to some communities. But one of our largest problems here in Charlotte, at least with plastics, were takeout food containers. Restaurants shut down, businesses switched to takeout only or delivery only. And these black and clear clamshell and takeout food containers, mostly made of polypropylene, number 5, started inundating our trash and recycling bins or our curbside bins. They are not recyclable here in Mecklenburg County, and they're not recyclable most anywhere in the country via curbside, even though they might have that material identifier, or as some people wrongly assume it to be a recycling triangle, they are not recyclable. But if clean and if source separated, i.e. kept away from all the other trash that you see in that bottom picture with a big red X on it, we can shred it down and we can turn it into, for the pandemic needs, PPE face shields or the 3D printed kind of part that held the mask. So we were able to run a program where we collected takeout food containers, and almost a 1-to-1 from a weight and gram perspective, one takeout food container meant one PPE face shield. But we learned that just saying, hey, we accept takeout food containers we saw this photo that you see on the screen, where there was medicine containers, there was shampoo containers, there was, other types of food containers, not takeout food containers. So we got a really quick lesson on wishful recycling, contamination and recycling, the challenges therein, and just how to tweak the messaging so that we got the top picture versus the bottom picture, which is still ongoing. We are still kind of battling through that societal, desire to just do good, assume that something is recyclable because it's simply plastic or it has that triangle on it, and to contaminate an otherwise, purposeful stream. Here's a little bit more in depth of how that process works, how the machinery behind me works, where we take a plastic like number 5, we shred it down and granulate it into a flake. Then that flake goes into an extruder where it is extruded out at a high temperature, looks kind of like a spaghetti noodle or a filament, and then it's spooled into a marketable spool like you see for 3D printers. And then at that point, it can kind of take 2 paths. It can either be pelletized to go into injection molding for very specific molds, or that spool can go directly to a 3D printer to print that. In the case of the pandemic, PPE, but can be used to print anything. And then, and really the important piece on a circular economy and closing that loop is the products being identified as a number 5, where it can be cycled back into the program instead of just creating a linear economy where we make something and we throw it away because we don't know what it's made of, or we don't know how to recycle it or reuse it properly. So one of the biggest takeaways from a 3D printing space is putting that material identifier on whatever you're 3D printing, so that whoever has it downline knows, hey, this is PLA, or this is PETG, or this is polypropylene, and we can do something with it if we have the means to do it, but we know more importantly what it is. Another fun program that we had around takeout food containers, it was with a local school, Providence Day. Their students got together, saw the 2 meals that they were given in these takeout food containers, got funding for bench molds and brick molds, and ended up taking their takeout food containers and putting it towards benches in their schools, or benches for their schools, campus grounds. And then their newest project, which we're currently experimenting with, you can see over my shoulder here some of the bricks, but creating these bricks to replace center blocks and traditional wood framing construction to make dividing walls, tiny homes, storage sheds, etc. This particular school is trying to build a 10 by 10 storage shed for their grounds crew because they don't have that security and storage for their groundskeepers, and the equipment keeps getting stolen. So they saw a disconnect and opportunity between the waste plastic that their cafeteria was generating during a pandemic and the opportunity to flake, extrude, mold a useful building project. Some other program highlights that we've had here at the Innovation Barn are around closing the loop, around redesigning in the circular space. Right now, Charlotte has a really big recycling and curbside issue. And the reason we're kind of seeing that is around education. Quick history lesson. Prior to 2018, a lot of our recyclables, a lot of our curbside material was going overseas. We created as a society this single stream out of convenience, and we just started throwing it in the blue bin or the green bin or whatever color bin you have up there. For here in Charlotte, it's green. But then we kind of just said, it's going to a magical place, and we'll let someone else deal with it. In 2018, China specifically, through their national sword policy, said, no more, guys. You're sending us trash. And at that point, it's our belief, and it's my strong belief, that we as a community, we as a society, as a country, should have stopped curbside recycling in its tracks 2018, that day, and kind of assessed our domestic capabilities, and seen where we could recycle or curbside and not have any issues, or where we needed to improve, invest in infrastructure, invest in recycling centers, invest in education, based on commodity markets and where it was being sold to. Unfortunately, we didn't do that. 2018 to now, we're still kind of recycling using that single stream, just put it in the green bin and someone will deal with it. And that's creating a lot of contamination. That's creating a lot of issues downstream, with the recycling centers having a hard time selling a very valuable bale of material, to the plastics, to the UBC, to the aluminum can market, et cetera. So we created this program to kind of see what that looks like from a source separation method, through a partnership with Coke Consolidated, a local bottler here. So they have got a goal to get every bottle back, for Charlotte, and the bottling here is 1.7 million bottles per week. So lofty goal. But we created these bags, and these bags, one was meant for plastic bottles only, one was meant for aluminum cans, UBC. And 250 people around the Innovation Barn got these bags. They got an app, and when they were full with clear plastic PET and clean aluminum cans, they scanned a QR code on the bags. A truck was dynamically routed to the house, where it picked up the bags and dropped off two empty bags. So instead of a large garbage truck or dump truck going around every single week or every other week, unnecessarily, and maybe picking up a half a bin or no bin, these were only being picked up if it was full. Then it was brought back to the Innovation Barn. We dumped them out on the table. We took a picture of the contents, and if there was any contamination whatsoever, that app, that person's profile got docked points. It was kind of a 1 strike, 2 strikes and you're out policy. What we found, and if they did it correctly, we rewarded them with local coupons to breweries or restaurants or sustainable initiatives around town. What we found with this source separation, incentivized recycling, we found in 6 months, I physically could hold the contamination in the palm of 2 hands. It was a soup can instead of the aluminum. It was a milk jug instead of the clear. I mean, it's very limited contamination because of this method. We were basically skimming off the top of the best recyclers, but getting very valuable material that we would then bale here on site and sell directly to producers that produced plastic bottles and aluminum can rolls that then sold to Coke Consolidated. So every bottle and can that we collected got turned into a bottle and can. That's ultimately, I think everyone should be aware that that's ultimately the goal of circular economy: is a can becomes a can, becomes a can, a bottle becomes a bottle, becomes a bottle, not a bottle becomes a t-shirt, becomes trash, etc. So that kind of confirmed that source separation was effective. That confirmed that personal accountability was effective. So instead of those wonderful recyclers being grouped in to their neighborhood's, dump truck or trash collector, and there being no accountability whatsoever, having that individual level of accountability of, hey, I know actually how to recycle correctly. I want to recycle correctly. And then doing so was way more effective of, hey, I know how to recycle correctly, but my neighbors on left and right don't. And my stuff is put at risk of going to the landfill when the recycling center can't process it. That was the kind of valuable takeaway. We then scaled that to the Charlotte Motor Speedway. So redesigning in the circular economy at the Innovation Barn, we were given a call. Charlotte Motor Speedway said, hey, we want to be zero waste. And I'm not sure if you've been to a NASCAR race or you've been to a large event like a Charlotte Motor Speedway, but that's a tall order. And when we went to the Speedway, when we went to see the grounds and the concourse, we saw 987 bins. They were wrapped 4 different ways. They had 3 different color schemes on them, 5 different messaging. It was a kind of branding and messaging nightmare. So for a person who wanted to recycle correctly, to be confused at, is this recyclable? I've got a paper hot dog boat. Paper is recyclable, but you're not asking for it. Was a nightmare. So what we actually did in redesigning in the circular economy space is we actually rewrapped all 987. You can see it on the photo here next to that dumpster. But we said clearly cans and bottles only. That's it. We actually, ironically, removed the word recycling from all the bins. It didn't have the word recyclable or recycling at all. We simply said we want beverage cans and clean bottles. That's it. And then next to all 987, we put a trash can. So when presented with that kind of station, if you had that hot dog boat and it wasn't a can or bottle, it went into the trash can. And with this simple redesign of the circular economy, we took a recycling rate of the Charlotte Motor Speedway from a 24% to over 70% with 2 races, the NHRA Hot Rod Race and the Coke 600. And doing so, all of those cans and bottles came back to the Innovation Barn. We baled them on site. You can see in the photo, the bales kind of top right. And then we sold those to an aluminum mill in West Virginia and a bottle processor in Waxhaw, North Carolina, and over 200,000 beverage containers we closed the loop on, but with just that simple redesign of messaging and branding. The Charlotte Motor Speedway is now using that in all of its events, and all of those bottles and cans are able to be captured and diverted from the landfill because of that lack of contamination and that better education. Another thing we're doing around glass and construction waste here at the Innovation Barn is focusing on 2 items: glass, post-consumer glass, so your beer bottles, your Coke bottles, your coffee glasses, but also on drywall. So 2 different projects, 2 different partnerships, kind of one direction. So on the right here, we've got a glass hammer mill and crusher that is being crushed and screened, and then a glass cullet that can then be put into concrete, and the silica sand can actually 1-to-1 chain or 1-to-1 serve as an alternative for sand in layment. But we've got a floor here with glass cullet, recycled glass cullet being used, kind of terrazzo style. That being scaled up to solve a glass recycling issue here in Charlotte, where glass is too contaminated to sell. Processors are shutting down, and we're having to ship glass. The closest glass processor is Atlanta, which is 3-4 hours away. It does not make economic sense to ship tons of heavy glass 3 to 4 hours away and get next to nothing back on the return. So having a hyper local solution like what you see here is solving that glass problem. Or in the same light, we have someone like National Gypsum, who ships out drywall to all these construction sites. And when you put drywall up, you have what's called clean scrap. You cut out a window, you cut out a door frame, you need 6 foot, but you have an 8-foot board. This pile is a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a percent of a typical multifamily, but it's this clean scrap. There's not paint on it. There's not asbestos in it. There's no contamination until it gets to the dumpster. And then when it gets in the dumpster, that's when you have your insulation, your electrical conduit, your 2x4s, your nails, your laborers' lunches and energy drinks, your dog poop bags from the neighborhood. So how can we get that clean scrap back to National Gypsum was the question proposed. And we devised a solution where we are collecting drywall in a specific room. There's signage around drywall, clean scrap goes here. And then our dumpsters, as kind of showcased on the slide, have lids. So we keep out water contamination and rainwater and dampness that way. But we also keep out other contamination or unwanted contamination. And from that, we're able to transport it directly back to National Gypsum, which is headquartered here in Charlotte, and turn that into a new drywall project. That is a relatively new project that's currently kind of going through pilot phase, but we expect in the next couple of months to actually have a fully recyclable drywall product up at the Innovation Barn and in a wall using this particular project's output. So super excited about that as well. Last year, mind you that we had limited visitation because of COVID-19 and the pandemic and being in a city-owned building. But we were able to create 7 jobs out of this business incubator. We had thousands and thousands of visitors and volunteer hours, and we recycled and closed the loop on over 15 tons of material. Now, mind you, we are a nonprofit of 2.5 people. So having that kind of impact, with a small and lean team, we're pretty proud of. And this year alone, in just the 3 months that we've been in 2023, we're already meeting and in some cases exceeding these numbers. So really excited to see what this year brings from the Innovation Barn perspective. That is our material lab, also known as the Innovation Barn down in Charlotte. Would love any questions or feedback you guys have from either circular economy, business incubation for circular economy, how we're operating in this space down in Charlotte. If you need more information, that's my information and email, but wanted to turn over the next kind of 15 or so minutes to questions or feedback.
If anybody has questions here in the room, he should be able to hear you also.
I have a question, but I wonder if there's one in the chat first that you should get. Is there? Okay, well, I'll ask Mike. Daniel, can you hear me? This is somebody in the audience.
I can't hear you.
Okay, my question is, and if you said it at the beginning, my apologies, but where did the initial capital come from to launch the Innovation Barn? That is an incredibly impressive operation, but it had to have cost something to come up to get going.
Easily our number one question asked. How does a nonprofit of 2.5 people manage and have access to a 36,000 square foot building dedicated around circular economy, which is a growing topic, and not too many people are psyched to fund, just blindly. So valid question. Where we get a lot of our success is that the city of Charlotte renovated. It's a city-owned building. They renovated the building to vanilla box standards. So they put in I think the final tally for the entire building to get it occupiable was around 3.6 million. But that was because, it was a really old building. So there was a lot of care taken to, not demo out everything, to be mindful of circular economy kind of principles and design and development. Plus, we also found just some unfortunate things based on the site where, the parking lot had a sinkhole and we had to put $250,000 into fixing that issue so that we could create a parking space. So the funding initially came from the city to renovate the building. And then once the building was occupiable, then it was turned over to Envision Charlotte for $1 a year, leased to us in order to run the programming. City of Charlotte does a lot of these $1-a-year leases to initiatives that they want to get behind, but don't want to charge a nonprofit, market rate, for instance, to run. But it's typically city-owned buildings pushed out to organizations then, go forth and conquer. A lot of the museums here in Charlotte are like that. Discovery place for kids, which is kind of a kids interactive education center, etc. So city-owned building, dollar lease, and then Envision Charlotte had the objective or it's our goal to then build out the program, find the partnerships, bring the right pieces into the building in order to achieve the building's mission, but then make sure programming is advancing, funding is secured, and that we can fund these projects to go on the next to meet the city's goals and Envision Charlotte's mission and goals. Giving an example, a lot of the drywall came in from National Gypsum. A lot of the lighting came in from Signify. A lot of these corporations have these either sustainable goals or desires to be featured and showcased. So they're using the Innovation Barn as a platform to do so. We've got a flooring company that wanted to create a sustainable product line, the glass cullet program. So they bought the glass machinery. They hired the people to run the glass machinery. We get to showcase the glass recycling and cullet creation, and then they get that product to put it out for their business. So a little bit of everything. Beg, borrow, and steal is not too far off, but it's a lot of like corporation and partnerships for sustainable goals and longer term missions.
Great, thank you very much.
And hey, Daniel, I just want to say that question wasn't just from anybody. That's our town sustainability manager, Carol Davis.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, our ultimate goal is to create a playbook so that there's an innovation barn in every city and town. Charlotte needs like 3 of them, in order to really make sense of the waste and the space and the opportunity to become a zero waste city. No city is going to be perfectly zero waste. We're not trying to shut down the landfill, but we are trying to educate the public on better material management, on the jobs and economic opportunity that can be created with a circular economy that we've already seen in just 1 year of being up and running. But it does take, a proverbial village, but we're finding success with organizations, small and large, wanting to either megaphone their success, megaphone their circular or sustainable goals, or just problem solve. National Gypsum was the one that came to us on this construction and demolition waste saying, hey, we used to go to Duke Energy for our coal ash and our gypsum product, but now we're kind of running low and we're going to be running low in like 5 years. We need a way to source clean scrap. Otherwise, we're importing it from Canada and far away places that just doesn't make financial and economic sense or environmental sense, shipping gypsum from halfway across the country. So is there a way that we can create little hyper-local solutions here in Charlotte and beyond in order to source not all of our gypsum, but the low-hanging fruit that a city under construction can provide?
Thank you.
Yep.
There's also a question in the chat about household batteries.
Household batteries, what do we have here? I'm not seeing a question in the chat.
Okay, it says, what is the hope for recycling regular home batteries? They are excluded from places I have access to. Virginia Tech takes them, but that isn't the public.
So here in Charlotte, we have public drop-offs. We have a couple of recycling centers that allow public drop-offs, but they are not accepted curbside. So it is a little limited, and it's not truly accessible for all when you have to drive 5 or 10 minutes away to drop off your lithium or alkaline batteries. That is not a particular space that we have a deep amount of expertise on, but it is yet another material that is, more and more prevalent these days with electric vehicles coming online. How do we make sure those batteries are able to be recycled? We have, that's that's a material. And can we design it in a way that it can easily be taken apart? Can we design it in a way that it can be collected easily? But we're starting to get into the whose responsibility is that? Is it the producer responsibility? Are we getting into EPR rules, or should it be the consumer responsibility? I'm not going to answer that, especially when it's being recorded. However, that is yet another material that if you've got a solution and you live in Charlotte or you're near the innovation barn, we would love to house and incubate that idea and see if it's got some legs to oomph along for sure.
But Daniel, I know here that there is this drop-off spot for rechargeable batteries. So like any local residents can take them to the YMCA thrift store. But the word that I've heard is that the household batteries can go in the trash and that it's really not, I guess, worth the expense to recycle them.
It's a challenging, because there's this catchy phrase going around that when in doubt, throw it out. And if you don't have or don't really know of a solution, then just put it in the trash. The landfill will accept it. But batteries are one of those things where I have to imagine that's not the case for that particular material. But again, this is bringing a point where it's obvious that Blacksburg, Virginia is not the same size, scope, investment, infrastructure, and capabilities of a large city like Charlotte, North Carolina. And we have means and investments that maybe Blacksburg or Montgomery County doesn't have. So that's where a lot of this recycling confusion kind of lies, where someone can graduate from Virginia Tech, move to Charlotte, and have this mentality of, I can't recycle batteries, I can just throw them away, whereas Charlotte might actually have the capabilities to recycle, and vice versa. You have a large commuter city like Charlotte, where someone lives just 20 minutes away in a Blacksburg-like town, and their capabilities at home are not as robust as their capabilities in the workplace, and that creates confusion and contamination. So not having a standard across the country and having 50 states that have 50 different priorities and 50 different investment goals and capturing is yet the more challenge for doing right by this material and managing our waste responsibly. So it depends, and there's no clean answer, and there won't be probably for a while.
I have a
Yes, great,
question,
thank you.
and it's about beer cans.
Beer cans.
Cans are coming with they're very, very thin, very easily crushed. And to make them sturdier, they're wrapped in a plastic label that provides some more structure. And it says on the label, remove to recycle. Do you know anything about that?
So you broke up a little bit, but if I hear you correctly, super thin wall beer cans are being wrapped by a sturdier plastic label, and the label itself is saying to remove the label before recycling.
Correct.
Okay. I have actually not seen that product. And I got to shake my head at it, because anything like removing a label before recycling is just like greenwashing 101. I mean, no one's going to do that. That makes it insanely difficult to recycle. And that's a poor design.
Okay.
I have a question, Daniel.
Yes.
Are you the founder of Envision?
I am not. I'm kind of the number two here.
Okay.
The founder is, well, we're a 11-year-old organization. I've been with the organization for about 4 years. I was hired to kind of bring this building to life. And now that it's to life, I manage a lot of the programs and projects within, not just organics and plastics, but really every tenant and every organization that comes through here. But
Okay.
not the founder of Envision Charlotte. I run my own consulting shop.
Okay, so then how did, do you know how Envision was able to make itself visible to the city of Charlotte in order to be able to take an opportunity like the Innovation Barn?
Absolutely, great question. So 11 years ago, it was put together through a collaboration or partnership. City of Charlotte, Duke Energy, our Uptown Association, Center City Partners, Cisco was involved too. But we basically said we need a sustainable goal to achieve, and let's put this organization, Envision Charlotte, together to achieve said goal. And the goal was to reduce the uptown energy efficient or energy use of our 60 plus commercial buildings, to reduce the energy usage by 20%. That was the goal. And to achieve that in 5 years or less. So Envision Charlotte was formed. We put shadow meters and kiosk and ran competitive programs up and down the buildings. We got 60 of 61 buildings to sign a pledge to reduce energy usage. And by year 3, I believe, we had a 19.2% energy reduction achieved, saving the businesses around $26 million in energy. Caught the eye of the White House. We developed an Envision America program where dozens of states came to Charlotte to kind of learn how to do this in their own cities and localities. And then that kind of put us on the map from a insert problem here, develop solution, go forth. So once we kind of checked off the energy pillar and kind of put that playbook out into the country of how to achieve that energy reduction and efficiency, we then looked at, jokingly Captain Planet, and we've got energy done. Let's look at waste. So we hired Metabolic to analyze our waste stream and target circular economy objectives. And when we took City of Charlotte to Amsterdam and Rotterdam and showed them circular economy in action, and then Metabolic pitched the kind of triple bottom line of you can create jobs, you can have economic growth and development, and oh, by the way, you can keep things out of landfill. The city signed us right up.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I have an additional question, Daniel. One of your early slides, you were talking about the different tenants or the different uses in the Innovation Barn.
Sure.
Do you all have, or are you all considering having a zero waste sort of refill station or shop for bulk products?
Absolutely. We've got an amazing organization here in town that has just that. Ecological is the name. She's an amazing small business owner. She focuses on refill stations and zero waste or low impact products. We're trying to get her showcased here, but it's just a matter of stretching her capabilities or expanding them. A lot of the issues, as you pointed out already, are around funding and just how to fund growth and how to build. One snag that we hit early on, we were in the final runnings for this large grant, and our goal was to then take that grant, create micro grants, and kind of disperse them out in kind of this incubator type fund. But the grant giver did not like micro grants, so we lost out on that grant. So creating ways to either fund or creating opportunities to provide space and then kind of grow or share in profit in order to have that person succeed in the early stages of their growth is a delicate balance that we've had here. We've had some tenants come in, not succeed and move out. We've had other tenants come in and absolutely crush it and are growing rapidly. So we do have a desire to have that kind of refill station to educate on zero waste consumerism, or just reducing packaging, altogether. But it's like any other incubator or like any other instance. You can't just say, I need this, I want it, let's have it here tomorrow. You got to find the entrepreneur, you got to find the ability and willingness to do so.
Thank you.
We do have on Saturdays, we have a circular Saturday market. And this particular entrepreneur has shown up a couple times to be showcased. But in our circular Saturdays market, it was originally intended to be kind of like a after hours market. So a lot of the farmers markets here in Charlotte are in the morning. But given the young kind of population, we got a lot of feedback that they would like an afternoon market. And then in the morning markets, we had a lot of vendors and farmers say, hey, I've got this excess produce or this excess product, and I don't want to travel 2 hours back or just throw it away because I didn't sell it. So providing a second opportunity or an after hours market, both in the afternoon and to focus on sustainable or zero waste vendors was an opportunity, kind of an easy opportunity to bring people to the innovation barn to have that engagement and active activity space. But then to also showcase, highlight, give the platform for vendors, farmers, small business owners to showcase the products. A lot of these small business owners, are taking the extra steps to have compostable packaging or sustainable sourcing, but don't really have a way to celebrate it. It's almost like they spend a lot of their efforts, resources, finances on getting their mission and product right, but then they don't have the budget or marketing to megaphone it out and say, look at all the good that I'm doing, or come buy from me because I'm doing this. So providing that space is an opportunity for them to do that as well.
Daniel, there's a question in the chat from Virgitta about composting and organic waste.
Yes. Can you tell me what was happening in the division with organic waste and solutions? Okay, awesome. So we've got this organization, tenant in-house, one of our first and kind of necessary partners. It's called Crown Town Compost. They are a small business that has a residential curbside collection for food waste. The city of Charlotte does not collect food waste curbside yet as a municipality, like some cities like New York and others do. Charlotte does not yet, but this organization, they've got like 800 residential clients, 400 commercial clients, and it's precisely what you can imagine, where they have rollout bins. You sign up for a subscription, your food waste goes in the bin, they collect it, turn it into soil, and then as a customer of their service, you get soil back for your gardens or plants or whatever you use soil for, or you can donate to local community centers or community gardens. But Crown Town Compost is in-house and they manage our food waste. So if we have an event or from our cafe or coffee shop or from our teaching kitchen, if there's any food waste generated at the Innovation Barn, it goes to Crown Town Compost, which then compost off-site. We also have another organization called The Bulb. The Bulb is a nonprofit that rescues food from local grocery stores, Trader Joe's specifically, and local farmers, where maybe they have excess that they've gleaned from their fields, or they just didn't sell enough of radishes that season. The Bulb then rescues that food, processes it, gets maybe the expired or the moldy ones out, and then that food, because we know it's contamination free, because we have hands, or the Bulb has hands on site, that goes to our black soldier flies. So black soldier flies, for those that don't know, they lay larvae, or they mate and lay larvae, and the larvae then eat food waste or digest food waste, organic waste, and then themselves become feedstock for chicken and fish. So in a closed loop here at the Innovation Barn, you've got the bulb processing food waste. The good food goes out to mobile markets and food deserts, neighborhoods in needs here in Charlotte. The bad food goes to the soldier flies. The soldier flies, the larvae eat the food waste, and then the larvae can then be fed to our tilapia that are in the aquaponics lab growing, in the aquaponics lab. So you can eat food at the Innovation Barn, feed it to the larvae then get fed to the fish, and then the cycle repeats. But that's how food waste is managed here. Our coffee grinds and some other organic waste here at the barn are being utilized. We've got a shipping container that's been converted into a mushroom farm. So another controlled environment agricultural system where we're growing blue oyster mushrooms, brown oyster mushrooms in a shipping container. And those are currently being experimented with. Instead of just sawdust or straw, we're using the coffee grinds and the spent coffee from our local coffee shop or our on-site cafe to create that mycelium-rich environment for the mushrooms to grow. So it's managed in a lot of interesting ways, both traditional composting and black soldier fly composting, but also very much in person, in your face. You can see and touch and the fly room, as it's been called. It's quite a fun place to explore. Originally, we were kind of young and scrappy a year ago. We had tours actually go into the fly room, tens of thousands of flies flying around, not really controlled system just yet. Definitely fake it till you make it mode. And to come out of there with, was quite the experience. So now we have viewing windows, we have triple redundancies and airlocks, and it makes way more sense to manage the flies and larvae.
Daniel, we're in awe here of everything that you're doing.
Well,
And unfortunately, we're at the end of our time. I don't know if anybody had any other questions, but I'm gonna have somebody draw for our book too.
Well, to those in city council roles or in leadership roles there in Blacksburg, please send me an email. Happy to expand further on how we develop partnerships, how we worked with local leadership, how city council here in Charlotte has been involved and has made progress, et cetera. We've got great relationships with our council in order to get this and keep this thing going forward. But for students and the public, we invite you all to Charlotte to check it out. But ultimately, our goal is to have an innovation barn or something similar, in every town in Blacksburg, where we can educate the public on what circular economy is, but also highlight initiatives and programs that will just make better use of the materials that we use on a daily basis. Some that we take advantage of, some that we just overlook or just aren't using wisely. Ultimately, maybe not in our lifetime, we'll run out of some of this material, and to design something that just makes sense and that can just be used over and over and over again is the ultimate goal. I mean, that's mimicking nature, not to get all tree hugger on us, but I mean, that's the ultimate goal. That's how trees have lasted so long. That's how we and our material will ultimately last the longest, is mimicking nature, having a circular economy, and closing these loops.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.